Okay, so for this label slash ingredient assignment, I'm going to be talking about this Kodiak brand Cubs oatmeal. For starters, this is marketed towards children, which I think can be a bit of a slippery slope as kids can't necessarily critically think about their nutrition choices in the same way that adults can. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but moving on to the ingredient list. The first ingredient is 100% whole grain oats, which is good. This is a whole grain, so that's definitely a good start, as that is our preferred type of grain to eat. This item does have some fat in the form of milk protein concentrate and whey protein isolate. There will be small amounts of trans fats, as this is a dairy product, but it is naturally occurring. There are multiple types of added sugar in this oatmeal: brown sugar, maple syrup, and cane sugar. We know that sometimes they'll include multiple types of sugar because if they only included one type, it would be higher on the ingredient list, since ingredients are listed in descending order based on the amount included in the food item. While brown sugar and maple syrup are better than cane sugar, they're still all added sugars as opposed to being naturally occurring. This ingredient list isn't too long, which I think is a good thing in this case. There aren't a huge excess of random ingredients added, and the ingredients are mostly recognizable and understandable and readable as well. Although milk protein concentrate is a bit vague, I did look that up to see what exactly it was, and it said that it's any type of concentrated milk product that contains between 40 to 90% protein, so it isn't a very specific ingredient. Moving on to the nutrition label, the serving size is one packet, so comes like this, packaged as a packet. I would say that this is actually the same as the portion size, since usually when you make oatmeal like this, you do make one packet's worth. Since the portion and serving size are the same, the portion size would also have 130 calories and 1.5 grams of fat in each portion. Trans fats are not listed on the label, and this is because there's a small amount that's under the required number to list it on the nutrition label. There are 7 grams of sugar listed in the serving size, all of which are added sugars, and there are 8 grams of protein per serving. Okay, so moving on to the front of the package, it says that it's made with 100% whole grains, which is true, as they use oats. And they also say it's kid approved. I say that up here. This is kind of just a vague claim. It's not a nutritional claim that you can corroborate or not. But I do think, like I said before, that marketing to kids can be a bit iffy. It also says that it is protein packed. This is also a bit vague, as being packed with protein doesn't have like a number associated with it. And depending on the age and size of a child or person who's eating this, their protein requirements are different. So it could potentially be a good source of protein, but protein packed is kind of vague and definitely kind of using a buzzword. I do think the drawing down here is a bit misleading, as it does have berries in it, and there aren't berries in the oatmeal. So this would be presumably something that would be like added by whoever's making it, which is fine, but it is just a little bit of a misleading photo because it makes you kind of think that there are berries in the oatmeal. Overall, I would say that this food isn't the most unhealthy choice by any means, but it's also not the most ideal. Ideally, if somebody's having oatmeal, they would be making it themselves using plain oats and then adding their own sweetener, toppings, etc. This would allow them a bit more control in the type and amount of sweetener they use, so they could use something more like maple syrup or honey versus sugar. And then also just kind of what other toppings they use or add on to like add protein, fat, and other things to the meal. However, if someone's in a rush or just wants a really simple or quick breakfast, I don't think that this is the worst option. It does have whole grains and includes protein and fat, which a lot of flavored oatmeals don't necessarily have those proteins and fat, which makes it a bit more balanced. And like I mentioned before, this is made with whole grains, so that claim on the front is true. Kind of also, like I said, I think the other claims are a bit more vague, and it's hard to say if they're explicitly true or not, since they seem to be using kind of buzzwords. I will also say one interesting thing that I realized is that the flavor is listed as maple brown sugar in that order, even though on the ingredient list brown sugar comes before maple syrup. I think this is generally because maple is seen as kind of healthier than brown sugar, and so people perceive it that way. But it is interesting that they do that in that order. So yeah, overall, I would say not the worst choice, but also not inherently the best.